Hey, welcome everyone to the From the Shadows podcast. I'm your host, Shane Grove. And for all our longtime listeners, still no Jason, the super producer. But he did get out of the hospital. He is feeling a little bit better, but he's still a little tired. So we're hoping to coax him back onto the airwaves for next week's podcast. I know a lot of people have still been checking up on him, and he's really thankful for, like I said, thankful for everybody's concern. And he said he can't wait to get on here and give his standard greetings. You know, I can't do it with the same kind of manliness that Jason can, but so I won't even try. but we appreciate everybody's concerns, and like I said, Jason, let's keep our fingers crossed, keep praying, and that he'll be back with us on next week's show. So with that being said, I just want to remind everybody that if you do have a story you want to tell, please get a hold of us on our Facebook pages, the From the Shadows podcast page or the After the Shadows forum page on Facebook, or you can find me on Instagram at Shane Grove Author, or our From the Shadows podcast Instagram, and our website, From the Shadows Podcast. There's a contact page. All those ways you can get a hold of me and tell me what kind of story you got, because we get them all the time, and we love to talk to everybody about their eyewitness accounts, and so feel free to get a hold of us. We'll definitely love to talk to you. So with that being said, our guest today is somebody that he's kind of tied into a couple of our former guests, and we're excited to have him on. So if you guys have listened to the happy story from Georgia and Johnny Two Bears story from Georgia, you'll remember them mentioning this fine gentleman with us on the podcast from Georgia is none other than Captain Joe. Captain Joe, welcome to the program.
Hey, thank you for having me, Shane. Good evening.
Hey, we're super excited because all Happy's been telling me for months and months. You got to talk to Captain Joe. You got to talk to Captain Joe. You got to talk to Captain Joe. And we'll get into it a little bit later, but because we'll tease the audience a little bit that you guys actually a couple weeks ago got to go back and visit the place that Happy had his encounters so many years ago.
We did,
and I mean, I've heard some of the stuff, and it's pretty exciting. So, but I just want to first why am I calling you Captain Joe? I mean, I want to know why I'm calling you Captain Joe.
Okay, well, quite simply, so I'm a retired infantry officer from the United States Army. My retirement rank was captain, and it just seemed like a very easy title to use, just because I was so used to using it in the military. So.
Well, Captain Joe, first and foremost, thank you for your service. I know you've sacrificed more than just your time and for the country. Okay, I don't know if you want to. Yeah. I don't know if maybe you want to go into like some of what happened during your service, and
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess it's quite simple. Much like the little emblem logo that you used on Skype to find me, right? It was a Bigfoot with a prosthetic leg.
What? By the way, that is fantastic merch right there. I mean, I follow Captain Joe shirt with the prosthetic leg Bigfoot. That's fantastic.
Yeah. So I was at Walter Reed, and a good friend of mine, who served at the 82nd Airborne, showed me that logo. Next thing you know, I had a box delivered to me up there with all these T-shirts of this, the Sasquatch with the left prosthetic leg, and so for the listeners, I was a platoon leader back in 2009 in Iraq, and so September 2009, was wounded by an IED, was subsequently medically evacuated to Landstuhl, Germany. When I got to Germany, began kind of like the whole medical and hospital process of trying to fix my leg. So I spent about 30 days in Germany. I was to the point where I was not obviously not able to go, be returned back to my unit, but they had to get me stabilized enough to be able to make the long trip from Germany back to Andrews Air Force Base here stateside. So when I did make it back here, landed at Andrews and then off to Walter Reed National Medical Center up there in Bethesda, Maryland. And then from there, I was able to be returned back to Georgia, where I live now. But, through the years, I've had multiple surgeries on my left lower leg to, try to keep it. So, I was considered a limb salvage patient at the time, so they, obviously they could amputate your leg, right then and there, at the time of injury or shortly thereafter. I chose to keep it. I did not want to lose my career because of the amputation. But unfortunately, my leg got worse through the years, and then finally, I was actually on an elk hunting trip in Montana. Not this past October, but the October prior, and I just shot a big bull elk down this very steep mountain, snowy mountain, and man, I physically couldn't go get down this, down the side of the mountain and go put my tag on it, and my guide and a caretaker friend that came with me went down there to go do it, and while they were down there dealing with my elk, I got on the phone on the side of the mountain, called Walter Reed, and just kind of told him, I said, look, I think I've come to that point where I realize that this leg's not doing me any good. And I requested to leave Montana and go straight to Maryland to go through the protocols for an elective amputation. So anyways, I was there in November. They scheduled the actual amputation surgery in early December. I go back up there and had to get a COVID test. By now, COVID was a thing, and somehow I was positive COVID test, and kind of had to laugh because I felt fine, no symptoms, nothing whatsoever. Ended up having to rent a car, drive all the way back to Georgia, because I couldn't fly. Then you know what? They said, well, when would you like to come back up? I'm like, well, early January is fine. So we went back up. My wife and I went back up early January. So my amputation surgery was on January 6th, which happened to be the day of the Capitol riots or whatever people want to call it. 8.5 hours after being under the table, I'll wake up in recovery, and I see on the news there in Walter Reed, the Capitol, police, and all this stuff going on, and I was still all drugged up, and I was like, oh great, you guys started another war without me.
Jeez.
Yeah, and so I was, so I spent like 3.5 weeks there at Walter Reed, and then they made a deal with me. If I promised not to do anything stupid, they'll let me go home to Georgia for a few weeks. And then I went back up in February to uh, uh, for the chief surgeon there to, review, my wounds and whatnot. And as soon as he signed off that I was good, I flew from Walter Reed straight down to the Center for Intrepid in San Antonio, Texas, and I spent most of the spring there doing my prosthetics and rehabilitation. And then was able to come home in early May, walking, on a new prosthetic leg, so everything's been good, but I think a lot of people kind of ask me, like, obviously how I got involved with the whole Sasquatch Bigfoot thing, right? And I think before we came on, I kind of told you about the visual sighting that I had on the military base, and it stuck with me for a few years. And even though I tried reaching out to some of these well-known sites or individuals, I don't think these people really took me serious. So I'm like, okay, you know what? I just kind of shelved it, So
Well, it's hearing that story, and I mean, I think that's important. Like to hear what you have gone through, to serve the country and to keep, what we all take for granted, that we can, be free and listen to Bigfoot shows and go Bigfooting and Sasquatch ghost hunting, whatever it is. I mean, there's real stuff going on other places in the world that our men and women are dealing with, whether it's physically or emotionally, years and years late, never leaves them. And I mean, I think it's important for people to have heard that part of your story as much as it is for them to hear this next part of the story. Now, I will say on a lighter note that having talked to Happy and Johnny Two Bears, I know why they take you Bigfooting, because they know when it gets real tough, they're just going to take out your prosthetic leg and you're going to be left with in the wood when it goes down. I know what those guys are up to, but I think I have a sneaky feeling you could probably defend yourself good enough that it won't matter.
I always think of that, not just because of the Bigfoot thing, but because I've been very fortunate to hunt in some awesome places. Last September I was in the backcountry of Wyoming, in an area where it's very well known for grizzly bears and whatnot. And believe me, you got to think about your personal safety out there, and sometimes bear spray does not work. I mean, well, I take that back. I'm sure it works. I just don't want to be the.
You don't want to be the one trying.
Yeah, because I mean, you talk to enough like hunting guides and stuff like that. If the wind's blowing in your face and you spray the bear, now you got it in your eyes and in the bear, and now you're both on the ground and screaming. I don't know. And then I always kind of joke. I'm like, who's to say this stuff doesn't taste like soy sauce to a bear?
Oh gosh.
Yeah, I mean, but I think when we were out at the location of Happy's encounter, I was the only one that was not armed. I brought a video camera. All the rest of them, they were all oned with something, and I'm just kind of like, okay,
Well, and then once we get into your sighting, I mean, it almost makes you think that maybe it doesn't matter what you go out there armed with, because it doesn't seem to be, it doesn't seem to be a deterrent. So.
Yeah. Well, that and I guess it's just one of those things where hey, I left my my pistol in the vehicle. Our outing that day, or or field investigation, whatever, I was more focused on toting a camera, and and I've spent not only a career, in the bush, I work in the outdoor industry now, so I do it for a good part of more than half the year, from hunting show, and different locations all over, so I feel, obviously very confident in the woods, but um, but anyways, my visual or my sighting and all that. I mean, it definitely makes you wonder sometimes, and obviously that's how I got to meet, Johnny Two Bears, and and it's been great collaborating with him and Angie, and then obviously, we've done our podcast as well and share stories, and they are what I call they're 24/7 into the subject, and I mean every day, and me, I'm like, nothing's cool ever happened to me, I mean,
well, listen, let's let the audience think if nothing cool has ever, ever happened to you.
Yeah.
So let's go back to your visual. When approximately did that take place then?
Okay. So, 4 years ago, a very grueling and prestigious sniper competition had changed hands of ownership, and the new owners had asked me, with my military background and shooting experience and whatnot, what can we do to make this event bigger and better? And and I've competed in this sniper challenge several times, and it is tough. It's one of those competitions where um, you know they're expected to lose 60% of the field, as being dropouts. So I knew that, hey, we had to keep the integrity of this competition being tough, because of my military experience and obviously rapport with the brass, you might say. I simply stated, I'm like, hey, we should bring this competition to a military base. And so I made several trips to different military installations, to look at obviously range complexes and whatnot, and what type of logistical support they would have. But lo and behold, end up being able to work with the obviously the staff and the garrison commander and commanding general here at the military base here in Georgia. I won't disclose the name of the installation, just to kind of protect them from any whatever, and I'll also leave the name of the sniper competition out. But anyways, this leading up to this event, which is held in January, there's obviously a lot of pre-planning that is involved in this, right? So, the nature of the competition is, it's 3 days. Competitors start on a Friday morning. They're expected, so they're 2-man teams, right? So they work together. And these teams are expected to carry all of their ammunition, their rifles, all their gear in their rucksacks, or their large backpacks. We call them rucks in the military. And these rucks weigh everything from 45 to 80 pounds, depending on how much they want to suffer, right? You know, if you pack light, they can expect to be cold and wet. You pack heavy, you're carrying it, right? Because you got you got to finish with everything you started with, right? But so, anyways, so of course this competition, you know, teams go from point A to B, from B to C, C to D, and you know what? They'll cover up to 40 miles. Well, for the pre-planning of all these ruck routes, right? So all these marching routes, myself and my daughter, we would go out and walk every trail, you know, on obviously using maps that were provided to us. You know, it was very neat that, you know, I was able to work with uh, uh, some folks with Garmin, you know, because one of the things that I wanted to do to protect the teams was to say, hey, if I tell you point A to point B is 4.6 miles, it is going to be 4.6 miles, right? Because the competitors are expected to be able to traverse that distance in a 7.5 minute mile pace, right? So,
Okay. Yeah.
So if I say, hey, you got X amount of time to get from point A to point B, you got to get there, right? And so I'm not cheating them on distance, you know, and time. So having the assets from the military to be able to help plan this was great. Um, you know, also leading up to this event was me volunteering time to help instruct some new competitors, some new soldiers that had signed up for this, but they had never shot they never shot a tactical precision rifle. Try not to use the word sniper rifle. Uh, and not at the distances that were going to be required in this event. Now, obviously, I had, you know, I've had lots of years of experience doing it. I was, you know, prior enlisted before I was an officer. You know, so, but anyways, you know, it was back in May, leading up to this, you know, to my sighting, you know, that we had planned to do a training day on one of the military ranges there on the installation. And so we had 3 teams out that day. I was going to act as a spotter for them. So meaning as they would fire at steel targets downrange, I had a large Leupold Mark IV spotting scope. So this is the military issued, you know, spotting scope, and you know, very high magnification, very high quality piece of glass. You know, and so it was myself, and then I had the range staff, a range safety officer. His job was to conduct all the safety operations. So he would announce to the shooters that the range was hot, meaning they were able to shoot at the targets. And then after so many minutes of that, he would call the range cold, meaning you know, they had to stop shooting, unload their rifles, and step back away from their guns, you know, not handling them, and then we would go look at their targets. So obviously, you know, so we started shooting at targets from 200 yards out to 600 yards. And as the shooters got more confident in communicating with one another and picking out targets and shooting at these steel targets on the range, we said, all right, we're going to go out to 1,000-yard targets. And so, you know, we rode out there in these, you know, UTVs and painted the targets white. And so at that point, that's the impact berm. So that's the furthest point away from the firing point, meaning firing point, meaning where their rifles were, where they were going to be doing the shooting from. We were 1,000 yards away, painting targets, and came back came back to the rifles, and those, the teams were expected to get their shooting solutions, based on the distance and the wind. And as the range safety officer called, the range is hot, I was standing behind them with my spotting scope on a tripod. And so I had teams 1, 2, and 3 in front of me, and I would tell, all right, 3, 3, you're up. So team 3, they would shoot. 2, you're up. 2 would shoot. 1, you're up, and 1 would shoot. And I would give them a correction, meaning, I could see where their bullets impacted, and if they were off, they missed the target to the right, I would, say, come left 0.2 mils or whatever distance it was that they needed, and they would make a correction, and they would be able to fire again and hopefully hit the target, right? But in the course of all this, because I was behind the shooters and up above them a little ways on a slight hill, I had a little bit more elevation, so I could see over the impact berm. And the impact berm was nothing but a big mound of dirt, right, that a bulldozer pushes, and so that's where your bullets are meant to impact, right? I mean, that's where they're supposed to go in the, they go in the earth, and that's where they stop. Now beyond that is what's called in the military, we call it a small arms impact area, right? So that is a huge piece of property, huge piece of acreage, that is mapped out to be able to, all right, if you shoot, your bullet's going to run out of air and gravity, and it's going to, it takes over, and the bullet falls to earth a couple hundred yards, away, right? So something I want to explain, like, to your listeners, like how a military range, most military installation ranges are set up. Imagine a pie plate, right? And then, or a pie in a pie plate, and you cut, the individual pieces of pie, right? And now you got these little triangles, right? So, and obviously, as the shooters are the pie crust, right? They're on the edge, and they shoot towards the middle. Okay, so all the ranges on most of the bases are set up that same way, where the pie crusts are the shooting points, right? And the impact area is like in the middle of the pie, right? So all the bullets, are supposed to land down in the middle somewhere, right? And that's for safety reasons, obviously, right? So you don't want to have a range kind of facing towards town, and some guy accidentally shoots his gun at a 45 degree and it goes off into some neighborhood somewhere, so that's why, ranges are kind of set up this way. Also, for more safety protocol, there is a range safety office, right? So they are kind of like the air traffic control office for all the range operations going on, right? So if, they're the ones that range safety officer, he communicates to through a radio, meaning like range 20 going hot at 1400, right? Going cold 14 whatever, whatever the time is. And he also tells people that, hey, he also tells that office that 3 personnel going down range to check targets, 3 personnel return, so obviously there's a lot of communication going on, again, for safety reasons. Well, in the midst of the shoot of these 3 teams shooting, and me spotting for them, and I can see over this berm, there's a single fire break. This fire break is just kind of like a dirt road. It's made by a dozer, right? It goes down 1 blade length and it comes back that same blade length, right? And it just, obviously there for, fire purposes. And very clear. So that fire break is running away from me. So I'm looking down looking down a dirt road, and it's running, 2,000 yards away, away from me. But this is where my sighting happens. I see this large, and I will say bipedal because it was on two legs, right? Person being Bigfoot, Sasquatch, just nonchalantly take a stride and cross this road. Now I'm fixed on it because I see the movement, right? And you know what? Instinctively I should have yelled, ceasefire, ceasefire, So but I'm watching this thing walking through the brush now, and you can kind of see it clear as day because it's not thick brush. It's been, very well cleared out. There's bushes here and there, some pine trees and whatnot, um, and I shout out to the RSO, called him by name. I said, "Do you see that over the berm, across the fire break?" And he's, "Oh my God, what is that?" Right? And then and then he yells out, "Ceasefire" on the bullhorn, and all the shooters stop shooting, right? And we see this thing going for a few more seconds, and then it just kind of disappears in the, thicker brush, right? And, but at no point did this thing run, duck for cover, Now, granted, I got these, three shooters in front of me, and then there's obviously other shooters utilizing the range, to our left and to our right, So there's a lot of gunfire going down in the direction of this being, right? And like I said, at no point did it duck for cover. Did it like jump to hide behind a tree? It just kept on walking. And so the funny thing about it is, the little logo picture that I have there on my Skype. I mean, that's kind of what it looked like, and maybe not such long arm sway length, but it was big. It was grayish brown. So now here we're kind of in a safety hold, right? And we had to call the range control office and tell them that we had, a personnel downrange. And of course, now they send a person out there to the range that we're utilizing. And, we are told that we were the only range in operation and hot that day. Meaning, so we're, the only shooters using, base ranges were the ones that were in front of us there. And because we were using live ammo and we were shooting, they don't allow for any maintenance operations inside that impact area. For obvious reasons, right? You never know if a stray bullet goes down there. Well, so so it just kind of that bothered me because in my career, something like that. I mean, that is a butt chewing, and and you know what? And if someone were to be injured out there, that's a career ender, you know. But yeah, it just bothered me, and that this large thing, and it, and I saw it through this spotting scope, right? And I've so obviously if you go to like the our Sasquatch Encounter Brigade Facebook page, I've posted photos of my spotting scope that I've used to take pictures of the moon with, right? And you know what? At high magnification, you can see the craters and the valleys of the moon through the spotting scope. I mean, it is just as good as a good telescope, And so for me, seeing this being at 1,200 yards, when I can pick out craters and valleys on the moon, right, at how many thousand miles away that is, you can't tell me what I saw in front of me at high magnification, it wasn't a bear just happened to skip across the road,
Yeah.
And it did not act like a human, because you know what? Even at that distance, with muzzles facing you and bullets coming in that direction, you're still going to hear, the rifle report, right? And anyone that's ever been in combat or not, they can tell you there's a very distinct noise of when you're getting shot at, you know. But this thing did not, it didn't act like, it cared. It just looked like, okay, I'm going from point A to point B, and I'm just taking this path, We were able to take it side by side down to that to the area where the crossing point was, and unfortunately, other than we got, there was a impression, but I wasn't thinking Bigfoot at the time, right? I'm sitting there trying to look for Vibram logo, right? I'm trying to look for that actual,
you still think it's a guy, a person.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm trying to see like what logo was on the tread pattern of their boot, right? Yeah, is it military issue boot, right? Yeah, but there was not enough. There was no tread pattern. It just looked like a very big depression. Now this is where I get to thinking about this and I tell people, I'm like, and this thing took a step to cross this road that I don't think Carl Lewis could have stepped across the road. And Carl Lewis, the
sprinter, the long
sprinter, and exactly, because this was a very wide, and if a person were to try this, I think they would have to exaggerate their gait. If you kind of catch my drift there, I mean, it just would not be a natural human step, just because it was just too far, and so yeah, and so that was one of those things. I'm like, okay, there's not you know, uh, clear boot tracks. Like I said, just very soft, kind of sugar sand, and it was just kind of one very big depression, in this crossing fire break, right? So I mean, I kind of let it go. I've got a lot of things to prepare for the sniper competition and whatnot. Well, now the event comes on. January rolls around, the event is happening. Right now, I've got 200 some of the best sniper teams. So you got all the different branches. You got Rangers, Green Berets. Top civilian teams, a lot of military units, even had some foreign army, foreign army competitors competing in this thing, and so they would shoot from early morning to about 1600 at night, so about 4 p.m. right, because in January it starts getting dark around that time, and one of the things that we had to do was the competitors, they had to sleep out, right? They had to sleep in a bivouac, right? So that kind of brings on the suck factor of this event, was that not only are they out there all day in the cold, January weather, now they got to sleep overnight in it too, right? And so we had a location picked out where all the teams would converge to this bivouac campsite at night. We would make sure that they all reported in. We had to collect all the ammunition from them, store it in a lockable building with a guard and whatnot. Just to make sure that no one went crazy in the middle of the night and decided to go shoot up somewhere on base and whatnot. And we had a sizable group of scorekeepers, staff, volunteers, right? People that ran the ranges, the scorekeepers, so I had scorekeepers from the Army Marksmanship Unit, some of the manufacturers from the industry, from scope manufacturers and whatnot, all these people travel here, to be part of this event. Well, it's also my job to make sure that all these people got fed. So, we had arranged for meals to be made, from restaurants in town, and then we would have a person drive them to us. Well, so we had an operation center that we would do all this stuff at. And anyways, two females that brought us our meals one night, they asked, if we need anything. They were on their way home, so they left about 9:30 p.m. And now they're driving home on Range Road. And Range Road is that, the road that goes around the big pie crust, right? So it's a hardball, paved road. And well, I mean, they leave, and about 10 minutes later, I get a frantic phone call from one of the ladies, and she's asking me, like, oh, do you have competitors out on the range in ghillie suits? And I'm like, no. At no point in the competition did the teams have to do anything but ghillie suits, so they did not even bring them. And I asked why, and she goes, well, she gave me their location, and her and the passenger said, well, a very large person in a ghillie suit just tried to cross the road in front of us. And I said, well, that's not any of ours. I said, because they're all the teams are accounted for and in the bivouac site. And because of the competition going on, there was no other training exercises or whatnot in the range complex at all. Right. Just again, safety reasons. So this lady, she just kind of said, okay, maybe it was just a bear. Because I think, in her mind, she didn't want to believe what she just saw, right? Mm-hmm. And literally, I talked to her like last week about this, right? And like she said, hey, it was a very tall thing on two legs in a ghillie suit trying to walk up onto the road to cross it. But as they were coming down, their headlights caught it. This thing did an about face and went right back in the brush. But it didn't run. I mean, as they passed by, it was still, in the shoulder where just grass. It hadn't gone into the thick brush yet, And they said it was just tall. And okay, yeah. So it's so funny, So I went out to the location with them, and I marked an X, right? And that was it. You know what? After the competition was all done, I finally had time to sit back and think about, okay, and what did I see? What did these ladies see? And I get the map out, right? And I'm like, okay, the location is less than a click, right? And less than 1,000 kilometers, right? From where I saw my visual and from the crossing point on the road where they had theirs. And so I do like everyone else, and I go to Google, right? And I type in Bigfoot sightings in Georgia, and it brings me to a BFRO database page, right? And, it says, lo and behold, man, right? There's listed in the county, and I look at the county, and I happen to see in 1979 on this same installation, there was a sighting. And as I read through this report, they name off a certain land feature, a creek, and I was like, huh. Ironically, that creek is like 500 yards from the spot that I saw my sighting, and that creek runs right up to the crossing point of the road where these ladies saw their thing in a ghillie suit trying to cross the road at 9:30 at night. Wow. And yeah, and you can almost draw a line. And so and so that's when I started going on to Facebook, and I start and it's so funny. I reached out to one group, and turns out they were more of a social club, and yeah. So, they really didn't, believe, they didn't even want to hear about it. I think they just wanted me to come out and have beers with them. But then, I reached out to some other, another page, well-known page, whatnot. And, the guy just kind of blew me off. I'm like, man, I have spent 9 years of my adult life in Iraq and Afghanistan, right? I have seen some of the, plus, another deployment to Africa. I have seen some of the coolest animals in the world. I have been in the Iraqi-Iranian, border. I've been in the Pakistan border. And here's this guy that just, wouldn't even believe anything I'm trying to tell him, and, I've had,
that has to be very frustrating.
Sure. Yeah. So here's a guy, what, man, when I was wounded, I had, Senator John McCain in my room, the former president, so I get this, I hate to tell you, the Facebook famous Bigfoot people not wanting to listen to me, and so lo and behold, I happened to see a page about like on Georgia Sasquatch and research, and I see Johnny Two Bears on there, and I reach out to him, and turns out he was a Marine. So as soon as I mentioned small arms impact areas, live fire, I mean, he knew. I mean, and any of your military listeners or even law enforcement listeners, they would know the severity of having someone downrange during a live fire on a hot range, and those things are not supposed to happen. There's too many safety protocols to prevent that, and that's what kind of got me into this subject, and again, it wasn't, a cool thing, like I saw a thing for several seconds, through a spotting scope, and it was walking on two legs, and it didn't have a care in the world that bullets were heading that direction,
Well, I think it's very telling that you and those two women, okay,
yeah,
but that you saw very clearly something that was not a person,
yeah,
but yet you still went to investigate it as if you were going to discover it was a person, like you know what I'm saying? Like
well, that's
thinking it was a Bigfoot was not, even though you could clearly see that it was not a person, that it was not.
It was not. It wasn't
just some. Yeah, it wasn't some guy walking. Yeah.
Yeah, it was not a person in uniform. It was, so the benefit that I had using that Mark IV loophole spotting scope is it has a ranging reticle in it. So ranging reticle kind of looks like, obviously, people see it in movies, right? Those scope reticles where they got little tick marks, right? And so we use those ticks and hash marks to get a height and width of an object, and from that you do a math solution and you can get basically a distance, right? So I saw enough of this thing to say it was 12 to 1,300 yards from my location, from where I saw it. And now, if I looked at a 6 foot, 6 foot being an average person, right, height, at that distance, they're puny compared to what I saw, and but yeah, so when the day of my incident back in that May, when I went out to that crossing location, believe me, I was hoping it'd be like some soldier who was lost, or maybe a timber cruiser who was out, running lines or something, but it wasn't. There was no clue. There was no, like I said, I used, the word Vibram. Spent a lot of our military soles, right? On our boots, got Vibram soles, right? And they're pretty easy to identify. But there was none of that. And then, you know what? These ladies, you can hear in their voices when they called. I mean, they were frightened, right? It was a mother-daughter, and they were frightened. Especially when they knew that we did not have competitors out doing things in ghillie suits, right? And then,
the first thing they want to say is it's a bear.
I think it's just they want to convince themselves that what they saw was not what they thought they really saw.
Because would you? Let's be real. If you were driving along, if you're those women and it was really a bear, they wouldn't have called you up and say, "Hey, guess what? I just saw a bear."
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
They're not gonna. They're not. It's not gonna be that big a deal. They knew it wasn't a bear, and then when you confirmed that you didn't have any guys out there, were running around like that, it's like, okay, well,
yeah. So what's so funny is so the next night when they came to bring out the meals is, we're in this big room, and one of the folks that were helping was, Green Beret and big guy, broad shoulders. And I was like, can you point out anyone in here that looks about it, what you saw? He goes, well, taller than him and wider. And it happened to be the biggest guy in the room, and I was like, I'm like, okay. And that dude's 6'6", and I said, okay, well, I don't think that was a bear, but I just didn't, I didn't want to keep antagonize them about it, just because I know they had to drive home again that night, but like I said, from time to time I'll see them, and we'll talk about it, and they still don't know. They don't want to admit that the whole Bigfoot thing, but it is. I think they know,
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And couple that with the 1979 report, from a soldier on that installation there, right? So this a conversation I've had with Johnny, and obviously with a lot of our crew, is that if you if you want to get lost, not be found, man, what a great place of real estate than on a military installation. It's got like thousands and thousands of acres that are really untouched and unused, right? Um, well,
it's one thing. It's one thing to get lost, though, but it's another thing to kind of stroll within range of getting shot.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's what So I think about, okay, January during the competition. We utilized so many different ranges on that day. We had so many competitors going from, like I said, different points, different ranges, right? So there was a lot of gunfire going on, right? A lot from all different directions. So at one point, so hey, if it was me and I wanted to egress or escape an area that was all of a sudden getting lit up, right, or high activity, I would wait till the cover of darkness, right? And I think that's perhaps what this thing was trying to do. It just so happens these ladies happen to be coming down the road and caught it, but yeah, yeah, it's kind of, it's kind of, obviously very intriguing, and then obviously, when Mr. Happy Harris, told me about his encounter, and I mean, it's 45 minutes away, right? And that 45 minutes from is very rural type country, farm agriculture type things. And then, he's in that location is very agriculture out there, private land owners with big sections of woods, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, he had his incident, 20, 30 years ago, and it just, it just kind of blows me away because I'm like, well, shoot, you know what? I mean, who knows how long, these things could have been in this area, so,
Well, the picture that I get is that, you say it's 45 minutes away by car,
yeah,
but by the crow flies, if you wanted to grab, jump down in a creek bed or follow a river or something,
yep.
you could probably get from the military base to where Happy and some of this other land is, and it wouldn't take 45 minutes.
No, exactly. Yeah, straight line would be different, plus, gosh, there's swampy areas. I mean, even the farm that I hunt, which I would say is like between distance wise is between, the installation and Happy's encounter location. But you know what? There's a swamp there. Very large swamp, and then, gosh, there's a swampy bottom area all near that area where Happy's encounter was at. And, so I'm like, well, man, what a great, section, or, like a byway, because most humans ain't going to go walking through all that stuff. You know what I mean? But
that's why they got roads.
Yeah, exactly. They've got exactly their own private little road network because most people don't go in that stuff, and there's food galore. And like I said, a lot of agriculture, from even from dairy farms to chicken houses and stuff like that, and um uh plenty of cover, right? So you've almost got all your basic needs met. So
now, do you? So let's come to like the present here. Like you sort of, you were telling me about the land that you hunt on and take care of. Some of the stuff that and you didn't think it was that big of a deal. You said it wasn't that exciting, but I think our listeners will. Might have different idea.
And again, so like I told you, the farm that I hunt on, it's 220 acres, right? And it private keypad gate entry, right? And then the adjoining landowner is a non-state resident, so he's lives out of state, and he's got thousands of acres, and he's got an old man caretaker, this individual only comes up maybe 3 or 4 times a year, so not a lot of pressure there, we've been very blessed in this area to be able to grow and produce some very, very big deer, right? I'm very selective on the ones that I harvest from there. And it's kind of funny, like my wife and, my friend who passed away, his widow, they say, I just go out there to feed my pets. Right. And, but on this farm, we've, in the time that I've hunted in some of the areas which are kind of butt up against this swamp. And like I said, this swamp travels for miles, right? And it's in a bottom area, bottom of a power line. I can only get a tractor down in there and early fall, just because it's so muddy and mucky. You'll get stuck. If you don't do it in a dry week or whatnot. But every time I have taken the tractor to bush hog some walking trails, so I even though I'm an amputee and I wear a prosthetic, I still park hundreds of yards away from like where I'm going to go hunt at. I enjoy the walking in process, right? It's good exercise. Two, I'm not scaring animals, right? So obviously I use a small tractor and a bush hog to cut some paths for me. Every time I do any type of work along that swamp area, things happen, and then, here's a good point. 2 years ago, fiber optic company, come through down that power line through the swamp. They brought all those big rigs that cut the limbs, off of trees that grow, inwards into a power line,
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so obviously, this was like took them about a week, but they left their equipment out there. Well, one afternoon I was out there and checking on some deer feeders and game cameras and stuff like that. And one of the guys rides up to me on a 4-wheeler and he started questioning me, about some of their equipment, and I was like, what do you mean? He goes, and he said, well, someone went down and tore up the instrument panel on one of their big dozers. And I said, man, it wasn't me. I said, why would the hell, I said, why the hell would I do that? Because you guys are doing me a favor. I mean, you guys are clearing that whole area for me. But the mistake is they left it down next to, so I call that spot the neutral zone, right? And it kind of, right, it's, I don't go there and they don't cross there. That's in my mind. That's kind of how I have to tell myself, right? Like, hey, if you Bigfoots really do exist and you guys are down here, you know what? I'll give you the swamp. You just don't come across, the dry land, right? But every time, whether that power company crew was down there or I'll cut areas near there. Man, my deer feeder this year was torn apart, the legs bent, and so when I have to describe this is that it didn't just get knocked over, right? So here's a deer feeder, on three legs, but the legs were displaced 25, 30 yards away in different directions, and then most of these deer feeders are big, heavy plastic things, and there's a big hole in one, right? And in the plastic, never even found the motor. The motor is gone. I had a cellular camera in a tree, about almost 6-7 feet up on a tree, pointing downward towards the feeder. That camera was ripped. The solar panel was torn, ripped up, and the camera was busted. And I've been hunting and obviously working in the hunting industry long enough that you can tell. Okay, hey, raccoons chewed this up or whatnot, right? No, there were no little teeth marks. This was like this thing was beat up. Broken plastic. There's no weird little claw marks. And, so this was back in June this year. And I said, okay, well, you know what? They were obviously, and I say they were upset that I cut a new path. And the reason I had to cut a new path through the woods is because, now I'm on prosthetic leg, right? And I wanted to cut a path that was easier for me to walk on, and that's all it is. I just happen to go through a section of woods I think they weren't too pleased about, and on that path, I found a dead Rottweiler. I mean, in the middle of the path. I mean, this dog could have died anywhere, but it was on this path, and I remember taking a picture of it, sending it to Johnny and Angie and whatnot. And I said, man, of all places this thing could have been, it happens to be in the, so I'm using a bush hog, 4-foot bush hog. It's in a 4-foot path, right? And there's hardwoods to the left and to the right of me,
I mean, it's not like it got hit by a car on the road and wandered.
No, because the nearest road is like a half mile away.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, and it'd have to get through a swamp too, right? And so that's what so I kind of shelved that, that incident, I've sat in a deer stand near that swamp on a very calm day, and I've heard like large trees. The whole saying, if a tree falls in the forest, do you hear it? Oh yeah, you hear it. I mean, it sounds like thunder falling, But you know what? There have been times where, the best description I can say is, I've heard all these like, imagine giving a t-ball team a bunch of bats and letting them go play Jedi Knights, right? Yeah. And that's what it sounds like going on in this swamp, right? And and here I'm trying to deer hunt, and I strictly bow hunt, so I don't really bring guns out there, And I enjoy, the whole archery process. But anyways, man, I hear these things. I'm hearing big trees snap and fall over and stuff like that. Like I said, on calm days and whatnot, and it's always in that swamp area, and yeah, I don't know, I've had something like run through the brush at one point along a creek, and my daughter and I were gonna we scouted out an area, put a new ladder stand, and all I could see was the tops of some brush being moved over, like the old King Kong movies, like you see the tops moving. Yeah, I see this just rushing, and that and I'm expecting. I mean, God, dog, something that big. I'm expecting like a cow to come running by me or something like that, And this thing just goes whizzing by. And, I didn't see a thing, I mean, just because it was, real thick stuff. But, I was like, well, you know what? The foot strike on the ground, it wasn't a deer, I mean, it didn't have itty bitty hooves. I mean, this thing it made enough noise when its feet was hitting the ground. I mean, it was like, like, gosh, like football players hitting those tackling sleds, I mean, it was a very driving sound. That is about the time I quit. I made sure that I carried a weapon because I had no idea. I had no idea what it was, right? But again, it's like I told one of the guys, Joey G from Florida, when he came up, for our field investigation over at Happy's place, was that, and I like to treat this as my deer factory. I do not want to believe that I'm also having to contend with these Sasquatch, Bigfoot things out here, because, man, I'm I got my daughter hunting out there. She goes and sits in a blind. She walks back in the dark with a headlamp on, and me the same, but you know what? I hear more reports and read more stories and incidents from people, from all the different various sites, and I'm like, uh-oh, man, maybe there's something else going on, but I guess I'm still trying to, like, oh, please don't, I just don't want I don't want that intrusion there, so
it's kind of like the denial
Yeah, no, exactly. That's
it's kind of like the denial that you experienced on the shooting range of please just let it be, maybe it is a steer that got lost and just running around out there and doing all this stuff.
Yeah.
Got a hold of the deer feeder and
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely very, it makes you nervous, and then obviously,
I gotta be honest. Hearing you say, okay, everything you've experienced and been through, hearing you say that it makes me nervous, that makes me nervous. Well, thinking that you're nervous because I mean, to me, you are a guy. Okay, your service, the stuff that you've gone through, you work on a hunting show, so you're. Yep. I mean, it's not like you are wearing a 3-piece suit and in an office building and don't know what's going on. And if you're in a place where you should feel super comfortable and you're nervous, that makes me nervous.
So what's so funny is I think like I told you earlier, I spent 10 days in the backcountry of Wyoming last September, right? And in well-known grizzly country. I saw a grizzly. We were walking up a Forest Service road, and this grizzly was walking down it. We were on foot, right? Bear saw us and it jumped in the brush. It was about 40 yards in front of us, right? Mm-hmm. That's normally what happens when you see a bear, right? I'm very confident hunting in grizzly country and stuff like that. But, man, I do not feel comfortable down in that swamp area. It's just a weird vibe down there, and it's yeah, so I when I think of like a military side, they that they whether it be a Sasquatch, Bigfoot, whatnot, they've got the home field advantage, right? They know the terrain, they know all the cover and concealment, and I don't, right? I do not have the advantage like that they do. Even the predominant wind is in their favor, as a hunter, I take that, we all kind of have to play the wind, right? But if I was a creature of some sort that did not want to be found, I mean, believe me, I mean, we have a smell, humans, and not only just humans, but Americans smell different than Middle Easterners, and Asians, it from obviously our diet, right? So we emit a smell. I mean, gosh, you go to ranger school, right? I mean, everybody that, towards the end of ranger school, their body just stinks. I mean, it is a god awful smell. It's that, your body's kind of eating itself and it emits this nasty, oily stink, and, if I was a creature such as, Bigfoot, Sasquatch, I mean, yeah, they've got some areas that I feel like, that's kind of like home turf, and they know it well. They know, Johnny and I, we talked about this a lot, even from points where he feels like they cross the road, they cross at a point that is very advantageous to them, right? Military, we try not to cross roads on long stretches, right? You kind of do it in a curve, right? Just because in a curve of the road, a curve of the road, right? I mean, it kind of limits your exposure, and I think Johnny in his research area, he is starting to see that and understand that. Obviously the terrain features are playing a very, very big thing in what he is finding, and it's always neat to talk to him. Like when he gets like 3 or 4 days off and he's out there, I mean, cause he's having this stuff go on outside his back porch, right? I mean,
Yep.
his back door, bam, it's happening, you know. And, and it's kind of funny because I mean, I spent so much time over on the farm and all that, and there's a cabin to stay at and all that and whatnot, and I guess that whole denial thing, man. I do not want to believe I'm having to share some woods with these things, but you know what? It definitely, there is definitely enough evidence to make me say, okay, there is something here, there is something happening. I mean, even to the point that Johnny kind of posted a little video, right? And you saw it,
Yep.
The dog skulls, and it's kind of disturbing to me because and I want I want your listeners to please understand, I am not a dog hunter, meaning like the type of guy that runs dogs to chase deer, flush deer out. That people do that, but I don't do that on the farm. Um, I don't even um, purposely go out and coyote hunt out there, so I don't go out with the game calls and try to call coyotes or whatnot, if a coyote comes up underneath a stand, I've got a bow and all that. I mean, yeah, it's sometimes you do have to take that shot because, coyotes and, they wreak havoc on the, turkey population and whatnot, and the deer population as well. Um, but, you know, I wanted him to see, hey, this is the little tractor trail that I cut, and this is where that dog was. And as we're walking to it, he finds a skull, and I'm like, well, that's not the dog. It's down here. And next thing you know, he's walking around, and here's another one. There's another one. There's another one, and I'm like, holy smokes! Oh, he got to 20 plus, and all within a 100-yard, 120-yard, radius. And you know, gosh, 150 yards from a pop-up line, right? That I have set up along this food plot, and all this is, right above the swamp, and I do not understand what is, like what they are all doing in that location, Johnny, I always sat there and we try to think. I'm like, all right, if you're a dog, you got hit on the road and it's a half mile away. What makes them want to go through a swamp, climb a big hill, and just expire right here? To me, I don't get it. Again, I did have to disclose. I'm like, all right, so there's a little spot not too far from there that I have left deer guts and hides, in the past, after we'd take them to the skinning shack and all that, but not a lot. I mean, I don't shoot a lot. I don't harvest a lot out there. And first I thought, well, maybe I made them mad by I'm not feeding them or something like that. Maybe they like the gut piles. I don't know, but it's not like I was giving them a weekly pile, easy meal, but again, right, it kind of goes back to, I cut a new path on a tractor, through the woods, and within a week, the first dog was found there in June. Now, right, Johnny and the crew come up here a couple weeks ago, and now there's skulls all over the place. Dude, it's kind of weird, man. And I have no explanation for it. It's
I mean, when I saw the video and talked to Happy about that, that is one of the craziest things. And I mean, look, I'm not a big outdoorsman. I'm not going out hunting and stuff, but I still know enough to know that the chances of you finding an area where there's 20 plus canine skulls is not good. I don't know even unless you're, unless we're talking about a dog pound somewhere that's euthanizing animals, and even they wouldn't just throw them out in the.
And how, I mean, and the only way, I mean, like I said, it's a controlled access gate, big wrought iron gate. There's no other access in, and that gate's locked, right?
So in other words, a human being is not driving onto that piece of property and dumping dogs.
No, you know what? And we're, I'm out there enough. You would be able to tell that there's some tire tracks, through the grass, or, you know what I mean? And there's none of that. That's what, so that's what's disturbing, about it all now. So I went out and I set up 3 cameras all in that area now, to try to hopefully capture something. Johnny and I, we also have a theory that, these things can see, the PIR, passive infrared, of these game cameras, only because some canines can, like wolves, right? And if they happen to have the ability to see this beam, right, then maybe they will stay away from that area. Right. So now I set these cameras up, basically creating a wall, right?
Not so much. If you happen to get a picture, that's great. But the main thing is you're doing it as a deterrent for them.
Exactly.
Go find someplace else to do this.
I want. So this is my theory is I want them to know I know what they're doing, and that they are moving into my territory, right? And right, here's the line, right? You guys got the swamp, I got above it. So you start putting dog skulls up here, you're crossing the line. And so I checked, cameras over the weekend, stuff like that. They're all fine. 2 of them are the cellular cameras, so I'd get a, obviously a image back to my phone here, instantly, so, but that's just, it'll be interesting to see if, this activity stops or if something else happens, so.
Wow. That's, look, I'll be, because, I'm in contact with Happy and Johnny and those guys. So I'm definitely anxious to hear what transpires. And I know we don't want to give too much away, but I know Johnny's working on putting the footage together from you guys being out there a couple weeks ago to go up on the Facebook page, I think.
Yeah.
And it should be pretty interesting.
It is. So, we did our investigation stuff over at the location where Happy's encounter was, and for Scott to find tracks, crossing a power line, and so when I say finding tracks, it rained the night before. We had a real big heavy rain front come through, right? So these things were pretty fresh. And for him to find that, and then we kind of just followed the straight line, where the direction that this thing was moving towards, and then we, finding this. So I'm gonna call it like a nest. I'm not sure if Johnny or Happy shared the pictures with you, but it'll be on the video piece that Johnny's putting together. But that thing was pretty intriguing. Again, because we had a storm and all that. This thing was, like I said, it wasn't scattered or nothing like that. I mean, this was something that was purposely done. with pine needles, right? And there was an indention in there, an indention in this pine needle the size of Johnny's body, because I made him lay down in it, right? And just because to get a representation, like, all right, something could have actually laid in this thing, like, you tell your kids to go rake up the leaves, then they lay down in it, but this was pine needles. And man, and then the next day Scott found 2 more, right? And I've never seen anything like that in the woods. There was no like claw marks or hoof marks to indicate like a known animal that we know did that, right? Now we all know, we know, like, turkeys, they go through the woods and they scratch and peck all the time. But you know what? This would take about, 20 turkeys getting in a, 8-foot diameter circle, and they all scratch towards the back at the same time. You know
20,
what I mean?
20 turkeys with a sole purpose.
Yeah, exactly.
That doesn't happen.
No, it doesn't. Because this was, and this circle, this was too perfect. This was too perfect of a circle, and hey, man, I tell you what, that thing, just seeing that, that was a huge eye opener, because I'm like, I've not seen this on any of the Bigfoot shows, uh, and we all have, you sit around and we think, man, okay, why would they do this? Well, you know what? It's been cold, right? Here, and what a good way to mound up some insulation, right? To sleep on the ground, or Angie had a really good theory about, it could be like a spot. Maybe they put their young, like one, babies, they sell them at stores, the little cradles that, little foam things that you put the infant in so it doesn't roll off, when you change their diapers.
Oh, yeah.
So maybe something like that, like, hey, it's just a safe, dry spot to put the young or something like that, and, there's so many different, but, things that it could be, but, that makes sense too, but like I said, I've not seen anything like that, and I think when, the video's out, I really hope people see that. And I hope, any of your listeners can come back and say, oh, I've seen this, or, they've found one too, or they'll be on the lookout to look for something like that, because it is remarkable that not just finding, one, but when you find 3, now that, that becomes repeatable, right?
Yeah, it's not an accident when it's 3.
Yeah, exactly. So.
Well, and that's kind of, and just like you said, that's kind of the point of sharing this stuff and putting together, the video evidence is to see if this behavior, or like, look, I really don't want to hear from somebody and say, oh yeah, I've seen places where there's, I found 30 canine skulls. That's just not a pleasant thought. But some of the other behavior though, yeah, you definitely want to hear that, so that, okay, it's, if it is an accident, well, there's accidents happening all over,
Yeah.
And you're just, like I said, I've heard similar stories from military personnel about seeing things out on ranges, and it just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. I talked to a former ranger up there at Fort Lewis that had a incident of while they were on a range, and basically using up all the ammunition at the end of the training exercise, because you can't turn in live ammo, so you just got to sit there and shoot everything into the burn, basically, right? And and in the course of doing that, something was screaming and hollering, howling, and at them from from downrange. You have to, spook these guys, and these are three rangers, right? And
yeah,
because they and that's where I was stationed too, so it's like, man, I know the exact range he's talking about, but the thing is, all right, so now you got a young soldier and he's doing this. He's not expected to hear something howling and whooping at them, from the direction that they're trying to, expel ammo, right? So,
yeah, exactly.
yeah. So, and again, it's one of those things where they too had to stop. They too had to go make sure there wasn't someone down there clutching their guts, and they accidentally sent a round into somebody. It wasn't, there was no one there, you know. So, yeah, So, I'm glad that more folks are sharing these experiences, so.
Yeah. And well, I tell you what, I really appreciate you sharing this. And to me, your eyewitness testimony is not to discount anybody else's, but your experience in the woods as a soldier, that your ability to recognize things, judge distances, and just know what should be in a place and what shouldn't be in a place, just totally makes your sighting so much more intriguing.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for giving me the platform to share with your listeners and about that. Again, not a week goes by that I don't think about it. Because again, it shouldn't have happened. It shouldn't have been there, right? And when you start putting the clues together, especially from the another sighting, from the late 70s, and then these ladies having their sighting, and it's just too much in that one area. So
yeah, hey, there's something going on in Georgia, but
you know what? I would have never believed it. So I was stationed up in Washington State for 9 years, and yeah, and you always kind of figure, that's kind of like the ground, that's the ground zero for all the Bigfoot stuff. But Georgia's got quite a bit, and but hey, you're in Ohio, right?
Same in Ohio.
Yeah, and Ohio's got some, we I deer hunted up in Licking County.
Oh yeah.
There's some big deer there. Yeah, we filmed an episode out that way, and there were some locals out there. They would tell me some stories. I was like, oh man, okay. So you know what? It's almost everywhere.
It is, and like I'm with you. When growing up, you just thought it was only in the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah.
And then since we've been doing this, it's just it's everywhere. I mean, people are seeing something, experiencing something, and it's not just their imagination. And like I said, you're hearing your sighting and your experiences, and you're the kind of guy that just knows what's not out of place.
Yeah.
And so I know, I don't know, but I still will, watch going out there with Happy and Johnny Two Bears, because I'm sure that's their plan, is they're going to leave you behind. So
that's probably.
But little do they know, I think you could probably wound at least Happy with a shot to his ankle, and then you could crawl out past it.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, well, Captain Joe, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
And I know our listeners are going to love this these experiences that you've shared. And when the stuff gets up that Johnny gets done, we'll be sure to share that too.
Thank you.
I'm sure everybody will be eager to see that. So stay safe out there.
Will do. Thank you.
Because I want to hear some more stories in the future.
We'll do. No, we'll do. We'll do. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of the From the Shadows podcast. Until next time, never shy away from the darkness or what may be lurking in the shadows. We are out. Ha 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 ha.